with. Thank you everybody for coming. As Chris has kindly said, biofilms is a very interesting subject, and it's a subject that grabbed my attention about 15 years ago. That slide is a biofilm, as you can see, a physical biofilm, and that was coming out of a flooded cover pit, so a slatted flooded cover pit. And that was the source of a much consternation at an Airbnb property. Needless to say, it was a very expensive rental property in Surrey, and Airbnb had got involved, and we lifted up the cover pit, and which incidentally the cover pit had no circulation whatsoever, and these chappies were leaping out of the cover pit. So that's one of our better photographs of a biofilm. So, tell you a little bit about myself. This year is my 40th anniversary of being in the industry. I started when I was 5. No, I'm only joking. 40 years I've been in the industry. I started as a lifeguard, and I've worked for some of the large corporations. I used to work for Arch Chemicals on the HTH and the Phychlor brands. So there is chlorine very much in my bloodstream. But my focus, as I said, 15 years ago, the biofilms grabbed my focus because I was starting to realize that there were issues that tipping a lot of chlorine into a swimming pool simply wasn't having the desired effect. And when I worked as managing director at Water Treatment Products, we had an industrial water treatment business, and the subject of biofilms and chlorine dioxide came up, and I thought, hang on a minute, you're talking about cold water systems, my industry, warm water. So the stupid question was, warmer the water, are we going to get a better proliferation of biofilms? And the answer was yes. Whilst at Water Treatment Products as Managing Director, we achieved one of the very few biocidal product regulation, product authorization, PT2, for a copper-based algicide. Enormously stressful, but it is something that we achieved, which gave us a product authorization number. And I really sort of now started to focus sort of with working, and there are people in the audience there who I'm working very close with evidence-led research. I am very, very, very keen on going to the coalface and working with people to get the facts and figures. So, we talked about understanding biofilms. Why now? Well, it's a very good question. And in fact, at the previous ISPE seminar, I was told, biofilms are nothing new. And I said, you're absolutely right. Biofilms have been around since the dawn of time. Over 2 billion years, depending on your timelines, 2.4, 2.5, 2.6 billion years. We've done an awful lot of research on pathogens, bacteria, parasites, but the biofilms is something that has been lagged behind, and it's only relatively until recently that we've started to unstitch and realize, oh, hell's bells. So to give you an idea, this is my first presentation of 2. My second presentation is tomorrow morning with the Legionnaire Control Association, because they've obviously realized there's a link between Legionnaire's disease and Legionella bacteria and biofilms. So the Biofilm Alliance, I last year did a presentation here, and one thing I can say, which is, it was Gertie's here from the Biofilm Alliance, and you had a handful to see so many people here now is a real leap forward. But the one thing that really grabbed my imagination was that number there was $5 trillion US. I've actually got pounds in there, but it's actually should be dollars. Who's going to split hairs? I think the reason why I put £5 trillion in there, because when I spoke to Paulina and Gertie, there's actually no contribution in that number to the recreational water industries. It wasn't until we started to talk and we realised, well, of course, biofilms are going to be really present. So biofilms impact not just our industry, agriculture, medical, and the NHS. Biofilms cost the NHS billions of pounds every year. billions and billions of pounds, and many more environments. So we know we've got a problem. So that picture there, believe it or not, is an LED light fitting. And that was found last year in a swimming pool, in a residential swimming pool, in a very, very, very exclusive part of the United Kingdom. Sandbanks. Yeah. And they said, Jim, we've got this. As soon as I saw that, I said, can I come to see you tomorrow? And I did. And yeah, it was quite, and interestingly, when the biofilm, we removed it, there was rust. And you've got MIC, microbiologically induced corrosion. So when I was at the Biofilm Alliance in July of last year doing a presentation to Manchester Metropolitan University, there was a gentleman who came up to me at lunchtime and said, we've never met before. He says, your presentation was very, very good. I'd like to introduce myself. And this gentleman was from the oil industry. And he told me of two very, very significant catastrophes they had. One was in Alaska. And he said, we now believe that biofilm was associated to that. So when I knocked the biofilm off that and I saw this rust, I thought, oh, hey, presto, we've got, we're starting to see and believe it. So processing and understanding the detail, we've got a heck of a lot of work to do. And as I say, it's great to see that we've got a much bigger audience in front of us. Research into the packs of biofilms. Myself and Gertie are going to have a conversation tomorrow. I'm also speaking to Coventry University regarding a PhD student who will be focusing on developing some real-led research. And interestingly, I know Gertie will know this, but when Coventry University came back to me and they said, my word, you have found something in an industry, we've gone through whatever you want to call it, the process, and they said, it's come back and said, you absolutely qualify for a PhD student. We found something here you've got something here that there's so little research on. So last year, Biofilm Alliance did their first presentation, and I feel this is going to be an ongoing. And Green Tech International is where I formed a partnership with Steve Martin, where we will be distributing chlorine dioxide product, which we'll talk about later in the presentation. So the relationship between biofilms and pathogens. Well, as I've already mentioned, swimming pool temperature has elevated. When I learnt to swim at Butlins Minehead in 1976, they were extraordinarily proud of the temperature of the swimming pool water at 76.9 degrees. My body was inclined to disagree with that. I felt the foot bath was warmer than the swimming pool. But today, generically, swimming pool temperatures are much, much, much warmer. So they are providing a great environment. And the reason why the NHS has to spend billions on biofilms is, guess what? Our body temperature is a perfect host for biofilms. We then got the hot tub market and the nutrients that the bathers donate to the water, the proteins, and primary biocides. And here's the interesting one for you. Primary biocides like chlorine have very, very, very limited impact on biofilms. So again, one of the Biofilm Alliance, I was listening to a seminar, NHS up in Scotland, MRSA, their words, very limited success with chlorine on MRSA because of the relationship with biocides. Biofilm offers excellent protection for Legionella bacteria, but also you have this partner in crime. You've heard of Pseudomonas aeruginosa. They are partners in crime. They are dependent on each other. And Pseudomonas aeruginosa is quite clever. It excretes a biofilm to protect itself. If it likes a surface, you're in trouble. Other things like MRSA, E. coli. I was speaking to a friend the other day who's just retired, and he's now wearing hearing aids. And he attributes the hearing aids to a lifetime of swimmer's ear, which is, you all know, Pseudomonas aeruginosa. So, the problems are out there. So the swimming pools, spa pools offer a perfect environment. We have a 40-gram chlorine dioxide tablet. and there's opportunities to make some serious improvements and savings, and also operational savings as well. So, biofilms, the ugly truth. They're a slimy, resilient community of microorganisms offering protection to Legionella and Pseudomonas aeruginosa, which Pseudomonas produce a protective slimy layer called a biofilm. And that little picture up there is under electron microscope of a biofilm. They quickly attach themselves to many surfaces, as I previously mentioned, pretty impervious to chlorine. These attachments, so if you're brushing your swimming pool, which you should be doing regularly, brilliant. How do you brush the internals of your filter, your media, your pipework, everything else? It's not possible. But one of the really, the one that, and I'm going to watch as I mentioned this to her, is the dental biofilm. So the Dental Association have done a fabulous job over the last few decades educating us all to brush our teeth twice a day, use a good toothpaste, use a mouthwash, because plaque is, guess what, a biofilm. Now, at 7:30 this morning, I really was wrestling with myself because that was a very different picture. I had a picture of an 8-year-old child with extensive gum disease and had lost most of their teeth, and I thought, really probably wasn't what you want to see on a Tuesday afternoon. But I took it out and I put the biofilm picture back. But ultimately, the question I sometimes get, I had it today, I don't have any problems in my pool. We don't have biofilms, so, why do I need this problem? And it is an education process. As I said, I used to work for Arch Chemicals, big calcium hypochlorite manufacturer. So here's the process. Your biofilms turn up, they start to form, they attach, they mature, and then they burst. And then they go through the process again. But the interesting bit is that burst. That is when you're failing your microbiological testing. So you assume you failed your microbiological test because something's come into the pool. Almost certainly it's that you have got a problem with biofilms. And I'm going to prove that in a slide in a short while. So without proper treatment, the biofilms are just going to keep on staying there. We know with our teeth, we brush them twice a day. But if you neglect that, you've got a problem. And if you neglect it for long enough, you're going to start losing your pearly whites. So the hidden impact of biofilms. Here is not an exclusive list, and I do apologise for that image because you can see the obvious mistake. There is no PPE on the glove, on the hand. There's no glove. But these are all the markets. Some of them have already spoken to us. So cruise shipping market. We're already speaking to one of the biggest operators of cruise ship, over 86 ships. Filter and sand media, that's a big one that we're finding at the moment. Both sand and glass getting an issue with the build-up of biofilms. Balance tanks and flooded cover pits. The reason why I joined in partnership, or we created Green Tech, at the distribution of the chlorine dioxide. My partner is Steve Martin, owner of Paramount Pools, and it was Steve who contacted me and said, I've got a problem with a swimming pool. There's one almighty smell coming, huge demand on chlorine. And I said, sounds like a biofilm. And those you probably know that Paramount manufacture the Aquamatic safety cover. So we went to site and I went underneath the cover and it was as slimy as you like. And I says, it's the biofilm on the underside of the cover. And he got it straight away, and we solved it. And this was a really exclusive property in St George's Hill in Surrey. So they were understandably. Grout supports biofilm growth. So one of the reach outs with Coventry University, the professor at Coventry University, he is an expert in minerals and grout, and he has experience of developing biofilm resistant grout products, because some of the chemical makeup of grouts promote the formation of biofilms. We talked about Legionella, Pseudomonas, responsible for trichloramines. Changing room areas, gullies, those slippery surfaces, you've got it, it's a biofilm. And one I didn't realize until recently was algae, black algae. They surround themselves with a biofilm. Very, very difficult. So I talked about proofs in the pudding. We were contacted by a holiday park, business use hot tubs, over 50 in this particular estate, and they were periodically failing the microbiological tests, and there was no rhyme or reason to it. So I said, can we come to site? Can we do some trial work? And he says, yes, please. So we took a control sample from the 5 hot tubs that we tried chlorine dioxide on. And then we put the chlorine dioxide into the water, and we took a sample at 1 minute, 5 minutes, and 10 minutes. Here's the really interesting bit. At 1 minute, at the control sample, before we added the chlorine dioxide, all passed. All passed, no issues with TVCs whatsoever. At 1 minute, we had a catastrophic burst of activity, and all samples failed. And at 5 minutes, we peaked out, and at 10 minutes, everything extinct. And that holiday park is still using it, and they're starting to look at and question the need to drain their hot tubs as frequently, because there's an awful lot of hot tubs in business use setting out there. You work out the numbers, HSG 282, that's an awful lot of water if we have a new system available to us. The next is a video. We quickly watch that. Okay, so the sharper ones amongst you might have recognised what product that is. It was right at the beginning, bottom left corner. That's an endless pull. And one of my clients is an endless pull dealer, and they were just about to send out 2 engineers to an endless pull to essentially pull the whole thing apart to facilitate a clean, because they'd had an issue with flow. I said, I've got a hydro dioxide in the car, let's use it. And that was the result. 2 engineers were then deployed to go elsewhere, and that's been used on that endless pull ever since. Huge reduction in chlorine demand, because you've got a endless pull system. You've got a swimmer. That endless pull system, and I'm not on commission, but I'm reliably and certainly informed it's one of the better, if not the best, residential countercurrent systems out there. So think about it. If you are a swimmer and you are got that at not even at 100%, 50%, what's your body doing? What's the biomechanics of your body doing? It's cooling itself down. You are sweating. So you are providing more nutrients and proteins in the water for the formation of biofilms. So the evidence was there. And it was as easy. So what we did learn, of course, is that the next time we did it, they had a little net on the to catch as much of that debris as possible. But you know, the evidence speaks for itself. So supporting education and awareness, that is one of our big key focuses, is education, education. We are going to be employing as many avenues as we can. That's with educating the end user, educating the industry, supplementing it with videos, fact sheets, social media platforms, all of that to get people out there. We are already working with some people who are in the hill, and we will work with the social media side of that to raise that awareness. I've mentioned about the Biofilm Alliance. I mentioned about the PhD student. It's something that is clearly, I mean, across the next 3 days, there are 4 presentations on biofilms. I'm doing 2 of them. One of the other ones in the Legionnaire Control, Gertie's already doing one tomorrow, and Robbie Phillips did one this morning. So I'm old enough to think there's no smoke without fire. So this is just and I will confess, this is AI generated. It's amazing what AI will do these days. Some git last night in the pub was showing me something about me with a Beatles haircut last night on AI. I wasn't impressed with that at all, but there we go. But what this is demonstrating is essentially the lack of ability of chlorine versus the deep penetration of chlorine dioxide. So the company who I'm working with is a company called Scotmass Group. They're based up in Scotland. The product is all made in Scotland. But that is rather impressive. So they are working across many, many, many industries, and to get those EN numbers certified on their chlorine dioxide product is, I've not seen the likes of that before. These guys are experts in the field. What we have at the moment for this industry is a tablet, a new 40-gram fast dissolved tablet. But we are working on automatic dosing systems. Scotmass have just installed in Brazil a chlorine dioxide plant near the Interlagos racetrack, where there's a big reservoir, because the main feeder of the reservoir is coming through one of the famous slums, and of course the water is pretty well awful, and they're dosing it with sodium hypochlorite, and they are getting THMs and HAAs and chloroforms off that, and the local residents are understandably complaining. But what I must point out at this stage is chlorine dioxide is nothing new. But I was introduced to a company, well, I've known it for some years, when I worked at Water Treatment Products, and there's a company who's, oh, thank you, Chris. It's a company who's predominantly based in Australia. And they came to me 15 years ago about a hydrogen peroxide product that ultimately fell foul of the biocidal product regulations. And I said to them, I said, chlorine dioxide, we're working, there's a story there. Anyhow, in 2024, I was invited to Lyon to speak to them at the show. The owner of the business was there, and my equivalent from Australia was there, and he says, James, we listened to every word that you mentioned about chlorine dioxide 15 years ago. And what you don't know is we launched it in Australia 4 years ago. And we have never, ever seen a product be so successful. The sales have gone like that. And I said to him, I says, yeah, you know the reason why, don't you? And he said, oh, Christ, he says, you're going to tell me now, aren't you? He says, it's biofilms, we know that. I says, but the majority of your swimming pools in Australia are all salt pools, and which means a high level of TDS. And what the biofilms like? Higher total dissolved solids. So nutrients, proteins, TDS, hey presto. So joining in, I approached Scotmass and said, I've got this vision. And frankly, I was only expecting to get an exclusive arrangement for the UK and Ireland and bits of Europe. Believe it or not, I came away with a global agreement. Yeah. So I have the whole market, and we've had people who have. This is high commendation for the show. I've had somebody who's specifically flown in from Qatar today to come and see us about this and our understanding of biofilms. Very good question. Let's see if we can go back. Yeah. Okay. So that's how much we pass in efficiency in the 1270 series. You only needed that much amount of chlorine dioxide. And this is how much you needed of the other biocide. What is that strength? Yeah. So let me give you a good example. I was talking to a big big installer of play equipment, splash pads and the such like, and they are currently using hydrogen peroxide when they commission their these water features. And they said, how much of your product, what are you going to need? And they're aiming for 200 ppm for their hydrogen peroxide. Says anywhere between 1 and 5 ppm will be sufficient to penetrate the biofilm, to destroy the biofilm, and that's demonstrating that you need much less of the product as opposed to these products will work, but you've got to throw an awful lot at that to solve the situation. So we've learned an awful lot over the years with the chlorine dioxide. So we're launching hydrodoxide. It's on the stand. And in partnership with Steve at Green Tech, the joint partnership. And we are very, very keen to work with partners to get some real-world field evidence. Sustainability, we feel, is a big part of this, not just about the biofilms destruction and the eradication of the pathogens as well. It's about the whole story and the whole picture. But again, here's another graph, chlorine and the availability of chlorine dioxide, significantly more capability with chlorine dioxide than there is with chlorine. But then this graph, I think, is a very, very, it kind of speaks for itself. Hypochlorous acid, we know that we need to get our pH between 7 and 7.5 because of the efficacy of the biocide. Well, with chlorine dioxide, it's between 8 and 10, and you're still getting 100% efficiency. I am not telling you for one moment to drop your pH or increase your pH. I'm simply saying, because there are a lot of people out there, and I will say one of the biggest scourges I think the industry has had over the last 20 years is the reduction in quality of water testing, reliance on dip strips. We did some testing on dip strips, and my word, some serious inaccuracies. I would always advocate a DPD reagent. There's some very good products, photometers. I remember delivering a training session many, many years ago and talking about a photometer, and there's a chap who'd worked in the plant room for 25 years and he was colourblind. And he admitted, he says, I'm not 100% sure what I've been writing down for the last few years. And I probably shouldn't say this, but that gentleman worked at a rather exclusive swimming pool at the end of the Mall. And didn't really understand. So going back, the solution, we've got a 40-gram chlorine dioxide tablet, easy to use. The other thing what we've done with the tablet as well, we've reduced its classification. It's not a 5.1 oxidizer, so it falls under limited quantity. The destruction of biofilm is the focus of the product. And when you've got commercial swimming pools, and I've seen Lester in the audience, and I remember Lester talking about commercial swimming pools with a demand on chlorine way into the small hours of the morning, and bathers have not been anywhere near that swimming pool for some considerable time. The question is, why are you still chucking kilos and kilos of chlorine into the water when the last bather left the pool some time ago? It's the biofilms. It's absolutely the biofilms. So we have to change. We can't keep treating the symptoms. We can't keep chucking chlorine into the water. You take, for instance, cyanuric acid. The last ISPE seminar I was at, there was a very valuable conversation on cyanuric acid. If you go to places in Europe, they're already, in fact, one of the countries is looking at bringing it into statute law, bringing cyanuric acid down to 75 ppm. We are looking at reviewing all of that. But if you look at, for instance, HSG 282, superchlorinate the hot tub with 50 ppm of chlorine, almost certainly somebody's been using stabilized chlorine. You get 50 ppm, your cyanuric acid shooting up. That hot tub could be, used, and then suddenly you ask that generic question: are you testing for stabilizer in the water? Blank face, and then they pull out the test strips. Oh my word! So, in that environment, biofilms. Hopefully, this session has helped you understand a little bit more about biofilms, their intrinsic relationship with some, Pseudomonas aeruginosa is a superbug. And I can remember talking about Pseudomonas aeruginosa just being a bacteria that got into your hair follicles, caused a bit of nasty reaction. Sometimes people thought it was bromine, so if you changed from a bromine and you went into chlorine sanitizer, and if it went away, or if it didn't go, you probably got Pseudomonas. I remember as a pool manager, mothers coming to me where the kids have been on the the floats, and their stomach, looks like somebody's been rubbing sandpaper over them. It's Pseudomonas that's got in, and with the venous catheters, the reason why they can be agony and any other catheter to withdraw from the skin is because a biofilm has filmed itself over the plastic. They are absolutely, real challenge. And understanding what the biofilm is, how it impacts us, we have it whether we like it or not. And I probably would challenge you, all of you, to just this one thing. Just this one thing. Nobody's going to take me up on it, and I don't want you to take me up on it. But I challenge any of you to not clean your teeth for a week. There you go. Yeah. You wouldn't do it. You wouldn't do it. I've had too many teeth kicked out playing rugby, and I've got the rest of them sort of gradually decaying and such like, and my family get very, very upset when I conduct my own home dentistry at home, and my wife is she says, oh my God, he's at it again. And I'd be the first one to admit that my dental hygiene when I was a child was nowhere near as good as it could have been. So if we can move our industry from where I was as a child with dental hygiene to essentially proactively, don't wait for the biofilms to come in. They're not fussy. They'll come in, they'll proliferate your swimming pool, balance tank, underside of your cover. Do something about it. But thank you very much. Any questions? Thank you very much. Thank you.